My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 72 years old, and I live alone in a quiet apartment overlooking the Hudson River in New York City. Most days, the city hums below me. Horns, laughter, footsteps, life moving endlessly forward. But for me, time feels slower now. Softer. Like the world has finally learned to whisper instead of shout. I spend my mornings making tea, feeding the little gray cat that showed up on my doorstep last winter, and talking to the plants I've somehow kept alive despite never being much of a gardener. People say that after 70, life should be peaceful. But peace doesn't just arrive one morning with the sunrise. Sometimes it comes only after you've survived storms you never saw coming. I used to believe love was unbreakable. That's what I told myself the day I married David Hayes. David wasn't the kind of man who turned heads, not at first glance. But he had a quiet charm, a confidence that made you feel safe, seen. I met him at a bookstore in Brooklyn when I was 22. I had just moved to New York from a small town in Ohio, chasing dreams of working in publishing. He was standing in the poetry section, holding a worn copy of Leaves of Grass. When our eyes met, he smiled, the kind of smile that made you feel you were the only person in the world. We fell in love fast, the way people do when they still believe love can conquer everything. Within a year, we were married in a small ceremony at Central Park, under cherry blossoms that seemed to bless us with every petal that fell. For a while, everything was perfect. We built a home in Queens, raised 2 children, Daniel and Claire, and shared quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and the sound of jazz records. David worked as an architect, and I managed a small independent bookstore in Manhattan. We were partners, friends, lovers, or so I believed. Looking back, I can see the cracks that were always there, hairline fractures beneath the surface. The missed dinners, the late nights at the office, the scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his shirts when he came home past midnight. But I brushed it all aside. Love makes you blind, or maybe it makes you see, but convinces you not to believe your own eyes. The truth began to unravel slowly. It started one spring evening. I was preparing dinner, roasted chicken his favorite, when his phone buzzed on the counter. The message flashed just long enough for me to see. "Can't wait to see you again tonight." Same place? My heart didn't shatter all at once. It cracked quietly, like ice breaking underfoot. That night, I didn't confront him. Instead, I sat across from him at dinner, watching him smile, listening to his easy laughter, and realizing that the man I had built my life around had already left me, long before I saw the truth. Days turned into weeks. The evidence piled up: receipts, late meetings, subtle changes in his tone. And then one evening, I followed him. He didn't go to work. He went to a hotel in Midtown. And when I saw him with her, young, beautiful, her hand tucked into his, I felt something inside me die, not just love, trust. I stood there on the street, hidden behind a newspaper stand, watching my husband of 30 years walk into a hotel with another woman. I didn't cry, not then. I just stood there, the sound of New York roaring around me, drowning out the silence inside my chest. For weeks, I lived like a ghost. I still cooked his meals, still smiled for our children, still pretended everything was fine. But at night, when the city lights flickered outside our window, I would sit awake, wondering where I had gone wrong. One night, I finally asked him quietly, "David, do you still love me?" He looked up from his laptop and said, without even pausing, "Of course I do." Why would you ask that? And in that moment, I realized lies don't always sound cruel. Sometimes they sound gentle, safe, familiar. I didn't confront him then. I didn't scream or throw things. That's not who I was. Instead, I began to distance myself, quietly, carefully. I started spending more time at the bookstore, taking long walks through Central Park, learning to be alone again. But the universe has a way of forcing the truth into the light. One evening, he left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. I wish I could say I resisted the temptation, but I didn't. What I found wasn't just one affair, it was years of deceit. Dozens of messages, photos, memories that didn't include me. That night, I packed a bag and left. I moved into a small apartment overlooking the Hudson, the same one I live in now. The kids were grown by then, busy with their own lives. I didn't tell them the truth right away. I wanted to protect them from the ugliness of it all. David called me for weeks. He begged, he apologized, he cried. But his words no longer reached me. The trust we built, the life we shared, it was all gone. At first, I thought leaving him was the end of my story. But it was only the beginning, because what I didn't know then was that healing doesn't start when you walk away. It starts when you decide to stop looking back. The first few weeks after I left David were the hardest of my life. The silence of my apartment felt too heavy, too empty. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reaching for the other side of the bed, only to find cold sheets and the echo of my own breathing. For 30 years, my life had revolved around someone else's needs. Now, all I had was myself. At first, I didn't know what to do with that freedom. It felt unfamiliar, almost frightening. I'd spend hours just walking through the city, down Fifth Avenue, through Bryant Park, along the river. Watching strangers hurry past, each carrying their own invisible burdens, made me realize something. I wasn't alone in my pain. Everyone was carrying a story they didn't tell. I started volunteering at a small community library. It reminded me of the bookstore I once managed, the smell of old paper, the soft hum of whispers, the way books seemed to heal people in quiet ways. I didn't tell anyone there who I was or what I had been through. I just listened. And in that listening, I began to heal. David tried to contact me often in the beginning. His messages started with anger. "You can't just walk away like this," then softened into regret. "I made a mistake. Please come home." But every time I read his words, I felt nothing. The man who had once held my heart no longer had the power to move it. Months passed. The divorce papers came through. I signed them with steady hands. My lawyer asked if I wanted to fight for more, money, property, whatever I could take. But I only said, I just want peace, because that's what true justice felt like to me. Not revenge, not destruction, but peace. A year went by before I saw him again. It was winter. Snow had started to fall, soft and delicate, covering the gray streets of New York like a quiet forgiveness. I was walking to the cafe near my apartment when I saw him sitting alone on a bench. David. He looked older, not just in years, but in spirit. His hair was thinner, his shoulders slouched, his eyes tired in a way I had never seen before. When he saw me, he froze. Then slowly he stood. "Margaret," he said softly, as if testing whether he still had the right to speak my name. I nodded politely, but didn't stop walking. "Please," he said, stepping closer. "Just hear me out." I turned, and for the first time in years looked him straight in the eye. There was no anger left in me, only a calm understanding of who he truly was and who I had become without him. "I don't hate you, David," I said quietly. "But I don't owe you my pain anymore." He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "I lost everything, Margaret. The woman I was with, she left. My firm pushed me out. I ruined my life." I nodded slowly. "No, David, you ruined our life, but I built mine again." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Snow fell between us, the sound of the city muted as if the world itself was listening. He whispered, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "You don't need it," I said. "But I do." Then I walked away, not fast, not angry, just free. That was the last time I ever saw him. In the years that followed, life began to bloom again. I turned my small apartment into a warm, living home. The community center became my second family, people who valued kindness, not perfection. I started hosting book readings for women rebuilding their lives after heartbreak. Every story shared was a wound turned into wisdom, and slowly my children began to understand. When I finally told them the truth about what happened, they didn't judge or pity me. They hugged me. Daniel said, "Mom, I'm proud of you for walking away." For the first time, I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Years passed. Seasons changed. My hair grew silver, my hands softer, and one morning, as I watched the sunrise over the Hudson, I realized something profound. I had loved deeply. I had lost deeply. And because of that, I had lived deeply. David's downfall was quiet, a loneliness that no apology could fix. But my justice wasn't in his suffering. It was in my peace. Justice, I learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the calm voice that says, "I survived." It's the steady heart that keeps beating, even after being broken. It's the gentle smile you give yourself in the mirror after years of hiding from your own reflection. Now, at 72, I live simply. I make tea. I feed my cat. I write letters I never send. And sometimes, I sit by the river, feeling the wind brush against my face, whispering like an old friend. People still ask if I ever loved again. The truth is, I did. I loved myself, and that, after everything, was enough. If you are listening to my story, remember this. You are stronger than the pain that broke you. You are worth more than the love that betrayed you. And peace, when it comes, is the truest form of justice. Because I was a woman who loved too deeply. But I am also a woman who learned to rise again, and that is the ending I choose.